There are three primary forces that govern the trajectory of consciousness once it's on the spiritual path in a conscious and deliberate way. And it becomes ever more aware of these three forces and their relative strength depending upon one's karmic background and one's determination. These three forces could be, let's say, initialized as ET, EP, and EO. ET is not what you think, but refers to Egoic Teleology, which means that every ego is not only pushed from behind, from its past conditionings, but it is pulled from the future, and it is brought without its knowing it to its own exhaustion and completion. And both of those will tend to appear simultaneously. And one can easily be confused with the other, but exhaustion doesn't necessarily mean completion. However, every ego is being drawn to the ultimate culmination of its soul's intention in the whole incarnational cycle, which always has embedded within it at a deep level the desire to return to its origin, its source. But this usually remains beyond the conscious understanding of the ego. And so we could call this force that of karma bhoga. It's the force in which one enjoys the suffering of one's karma and the learning from the experience of karma. And this path in ancient Egypt was the Osirian path, the path of Osiris, the long way around, which requires one's dismemberment, you could say, which refers to the dissociation of various aspects of consciousness that must be reintegrated at the end, when the ego can no longer function. The second path, the EP, is the Epistemophilia. This is the drive, we could say, that is actually the love of knowledge, but from the ego's perspective, this is present because knowledge is power. And as one's knowledge rises, however, one realizes one's powerlessness as an ego. And so the knowledge that unfolds is that of the escape hatch beyond the ego as consciousness jettisons that vehicle in order to find one that has more power, which brings one gradually into soul consciousness, and then beyond that to the real power and the real knowledge that is beyond the pay grade of the soul as well. But this kind of a force is based on jnana bhakti, the love of that knowledge, which again brings one to one's origin, but this time on the vertical dimension. And then there's the EO, which is you could say, the essence of oneness, or the essential oneness that is the core of consciousness. And it is this that gives sparks of realization from time to time of that unity of consciousness that transcends ego and soul. And if it is strong enough, it produces a moment of grace that can enable a direct and immediate upliftment into liberation without having to go through either the gradual path of karma or that of gaining more and more knowledge through one's introspection and one's reflection upon karma. But this path of grace, you could say, this path of direct liberation will depend on one's parabhakti, one's love of that absolute oneness, which is again the real origin of all consciousness. But that which, in order to know fully while alive, requires the death of the ego. And those who are willing to undergo that death, that force will enable liberation to happen without having to go through the long way of increasing suffering. So everyone is, as I say, being governed by these three forces, but also you govern them because of your own free will to choose karma, to choose knowledge, or to choose the love of that supreme power that brings grace. And so everyone has the ability to alter the current trajectory of consciousness through a shift of attention to that force that beckons one with most strength, which would have to do with one's own desire, whether the desire is on the horizontal plane, the desire is for the symbolic understanding of the horizontal and the vertical, or it is the direct knowledge through union. And this determines the difference between people's way of going about life and navigating the obstacles that existence brings to one's happiness and offers the way to that supreme happiness that every consciousness seeks, but which can only be found within, once all of the illusions that happiness can be found elsewhere, or in an object, or an other, or in symbolic understanding even, or in, let's say, the rituals of bhakti, or the various ways in which we as individuals relate to the Absolute, but do not dissolve into it. So the more that preliminary phase of understanding is enjoyed, and the less one seeks the immediate cessation of thought and of, therefore, karma, then this determines a much, let's say, more horizontal and gradual slope of one's ascent to higher levels of vibrational frequency.